Well, come at the hour, as they would say. Are you ready to interact with us? Are you ready to contribute to this very, very important conversation? As I always say, the People's Court is about you, the people, back at home. And on this very point, we take a look, or we take stock of what it is that the Kenya Kwanza government has done for the people of Kenya, what it intends to do. We all understand the breakdown of about 15 aspects that they had set, that is in line with their manifesto, that they would wish to, deliver for the people of Kenya. And of course, we have different views as pertaining to the different sectors that, conform of what a government is. And that's exactly what we'll be looking at. As we all said earlier on, we'll be having guests on set that will help us decipher on this. But of importance, we'll also be crossing over two different parts of the country, that is different counties. Our correspondents on standby, so they would tell us what it is that the people down there equally feel. People's Court is about you. Always important that you interact with us. The hashtag is People's Court. We'll be sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. And before I get the rest of the guys, or perhaps my colleagues, to join us on this very conversation, allow me to acknowledge the presence of the gentlemen that are with me on this particular set. On my farthest right is Tuva Adams. Tuva, who's an economist. Thank you so much for creating time to be with us. And right next to Adams is the constitutional lawyer himself, my favorite. I am not saying that Tuva is not my favorite, neither am I saying that the rest are not. But yes, it's because we have done lots of shows together and we continue to speak about matters that pertain to this very country. Wakili Ndegwa Njiru, thank you so much for creating time to be with us. Yes. Good evening, and to you as well. Lastly, on my set is Wachira Peterson. Wachira Peterson equally is a household name, and especially when it comes to matters health. Today, I see some of them have decided to say that they might actually take a strike in the event that some issues are not addressed. We'll be looking at that because that is part of the government and part of what it is that the government needs to deliver to the people of Kenya. But of importance, the numerous changes that are playing part in the health sector. It's very, very important that we look at that. Of course, Chairperson Kuko, that is Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, as seated right next here. And of course, we'll be getting to that conversation. But gentlemen, before I allow you to say anything, I think it's important that we as well allow Victor to say jambo, or perhaps just to ask this quick question before we cross over to Victor. What do you make of 1 year of President William Ruto? Or Victor takes it first, or we ask the gentlemen to tell us what they make of the 1 year. All right, Victor, introduce your guests first, and then we'll be coming back to that very important conversation.
Thank you so much, Linda. And good evening, Kenya. And those of us who are watching from other parts of the globe, good evening and karibu. Linda asked me to say jambo, so I'll say jambo. And as I say jambo, I'd like to introduce the people that I have on my side of the set this evening. To my immediate left, start with you. We've got lawyer Linda Banja, and that's Linda with a Y. Linda's a lawyer over a decade of experience, and she's got particular areas of interest or insight. Talk about sexual and gender-based violence, talk about data protection, talk about IP, that is intellectual property, among other things. Those are things she has a passion for. Those are things she has a lot of experience with. Next, we have Job Wanjohi. He is the head of Policy, Research and Advocacy at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Karibu and welcome once again. And over here we have a gentleman who wears many, many hats. He is a certified public accountant. He is also an economist, and he's also involved in the financial sector particularly. He's a lender. He's somebody who will be giving us a lot of insight, of course, and we appreciate you coming in tonight. His name, of course, is S.T. Wainaina. Thank you so much. Karibu sana. We will be talking a little bit more, but for now, let's have a look at what George Maringa has on the other side of the studio. Over to you, George.
Absolutely, indeed. On this side, I do have a panel of two esteemed Kenyans. I will begin with Stella, who is already here on my set. Stella Oyagi is an advocate of the Higher Court of Kenya with over 10 years experience practicing law. She holds a master's degree in public international law from the University of Nairobi, and her area of specialization is policy development and advocacy on women's rights, sexual and reproductive health rights, international human rights, international humanitarian law. Stella Oyagi, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the People's Court. Brilliant. Also joining me is Chris Otieno. He's a security expert. His overall area of specialization is risk, security, public and occupational safety, health and environment management consultant. And he has experience spanning over 2 decades and 3 years of service in 6 sectors of our national economy. A cocktail of guests that we have for you tonight shall be analyzing all that all angles of the one-year administration of Dr. William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, the 5th President, and how he has fared on. Remember, on such a day last year, we were gearing up for his inauguration. And I would want to hand over to Linda Alela so that she kicks off the conversation tonight on the Kenya Kwanza scorecard. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, George. The Kenya Kwanza government outlined about 15 broad thematic areas that, of course, they will be looking at, and perhaps, we take a time to supervise and as well scrutinize that as Kenyans, because this is certainly our business. And of course, we look at these 4 areas that they picked, to address in 100 days, in all the years that, of course, there will be, and at the top of the helm. That's so we're looking at 5 years. Perhaps if they're lucky enough, Kenyans will accord them another 5 years. But we are looking at the short-term goals, the medium goals, as well as the long-term goals. Just what have they done to the people of Kenya? And I think the first question then would be, what do you make of President William Ruto's 1 year in office? Is it promising? Do we look at tomorrow that looks pretty much promising?
I would say I'm a bit conflicted.
Okay.
And, on the side of healthcare, I think for now I would give them around 30%.
Healthcare.
And that 30% effort, not for achievement.
Okay.
Because there are efforts that we are seeing towards probably fulfillment of some of the issues among the 13 promises that were given on the side of health. But where the rubber meets the road, that is on human resources. We are seeing avoidance of that topic.
Yeah.
And for that, we believe that we really can't tell where we are going. And that is why you have seen some of us out there today trying to remind them that we must take deliberate and bold steps towards achievement of universal health coverage. And that means we must have the difficult conversation about the human resources.
And of course, we're going to get to that. Wakili, looking at the legal aspects of things, and when he says 30%, health sector, and perhaps somebody else will say 30% on different, sectors, isn't that good enough for a year?
Well, I would say that these are 365 days that are full of agony, misery, breakdown of the rule of law, corruption, hunger, incompetence, spillage of national resources.
It's as if money has been poured. Hold it right there. I am told that we have to fix your microphone, of this government. So to you, we have talked about the finance bill. We still are there. We are at the level of the act. Okia Mtata here, there, and all that. Money is at the heart of this. Actually, they campaigned, in the backdrop of how they're going to change the economy. And you are an economist. Before you say something, I'm told Munio, our very own correspondent, is on standby at the level of Mombasa County. So let's listen into what the people of Mombasa County have to say, and then we come back to the gentleman here. Paul Munio, if you can hear me, Jambo.
Well, thank you so much. As we talk matters health, it is quite critical to our economy, since we needed to have a well-off and a healthy population to be able to work for a better tomorrow. And of course, as we push for universal health care, I am joined by players from different teams ambao watakuwa wakitueleza kuhusiana na hosia zao na maoni yao kuhusiana na masuala ya afya. Kwa hivyo nitawaalika ili waweze kujitambulisha kwa haraka na waweze kutueleza mengi kuhusiana na masuala ya afya. Karibuni moja kwa moja. Tuanze kwa jina lako, tueleze masuala ya afya unaiona vipi katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza?
Naam, naitwa Sam Mashare Kibali na nashukuru na nikizingatia yale mambo ambao serikali ya UDA imeweza kupiga hatua kuhusiana na mambo ya afya, nimeona angalau wamepiga hatua moja na ijapokuwa kuwa kuna nafasi kubwa ya kuendelea, lakini angalau kuna hatua moja mbili tumeona ikijikakamua kuyafanya. Na kwanza ambayo ningependa kupongeza serikali ya UDA, tunaona kuwa wamepunguza NHIF kwa mwananchi wa kawaida mahasla, ambayo ilikuwa kutoka shilingi 500 wamepunguza wakaileta mpaka shilingi 300. Kwa hivyo hiyo itakuwa inatia watu motisha ili kuweza kujikatia NHIF, ili baadaye watakapohitaji huduma za NHIF inaweza kuwa inawazangamzia. So kupitia hilo imewatia watu wananchi motisha ili waweze kujihusisha na mambo kama, ili baadaye wanapohitaji huduma kama zile wanaweza zipata.
Naam, asante sana. Kwa sababu ya wakati tupate mwingine, jitambulishe.
Asante sana. Kwa majina ni Josephat Msungu. Naweza sema kwamba kwa mara ya kwanza serikali ya Mheshimiwa Ruto imeweza kupeana mgao unaohitajika kwa wakati katika serikali za kaunti, na inapofanya vile basi magavana hawana sababu ya kutonunua madawa katika hospitali zetu, ambayo imekuwa ni jambo ambalo limekuwa likifaidisha kwamba unaenda kwa hospitali unapata hakuna madawa kwa sababu kuna upungufu wa pesa, ama serikali kuijaachilia pesa. Jambo la pili ni kwa sababu ya hii msongamano wa watu katika hospitali. Mheshimiwa Ruto amesema kwamba anaenda kurecruit wahudumu wa afya kuanzia vijijini, so that wewe unaweza kutibiwa kama ni matibabu ndogo ndogo pale kijijini kabla ulemewe kufanywa rifaa katika hospitali. Iwapo mpango huu utaweza kufaulu, then atakuwa amepiga jeki sana katika sekta ya afya.
Naam, asante sana. Tukianza na wewe, tukianza na majina, tueleze unaipatia asilimia ngapi serikali hii kuhusiana na masuala ya afya?
Kwa majina naitwa Anthony Mwaura. Nikipatia asilimia naweza nikawapatia 5 kwa 5, 5 out of 10, kwa sababu ukiangalia ile shida inakuja ni ile kudre. Unaona kama NHIF kuna kati iliwekwa mara tukaambiwa ni 1000 watu wa chini maasora, ule mkubwa na NHIF kuna kati alitangaza. Mwisho tena ndio tukaona rais kwa kule Kakamega amesema maasora watakuwa nalipa shilingi 300. Lakini sasa mgonjwa hezi ngojea. Mgonjwa anataka mambo ifanywe haraka ndio aende hospitali. Tunataka waharakishe. Ile pasani ndio wapatie, kwa sababu ile kwenda pole pole ndio inaleta shida. Kwa hivyo wakiharakisha, kama ni watu wajue ni 300 kesho, nikienda 300 nianze kukata kuanzia kesho, itakuwa sawa. Lakini mara inakuwa ni wiki hii na hairisho wiki ile nyingine, ile kitu inaonekana, sababu mgonjwa kwa mgonjwa ni mgonjwa. Ni kitu sasa waharakishe, mambo ya afya imaliziwe, watu wajue wa Kenya kuanzia kesho ama next week wanalipa 300 wale wa chini, na wale hawana uwezo wao wanalipia ujulikane akina nani, kila kiwango kila mtu ijulikane. Ndio sasa watu waende hospitali, sababu kuna watu sasa tunaongea ni wagonjwa kwa hospitali na hawana pesa.
Asante sana. Tukimalizia na wewe, tueleze jina lako, alafu pia tueleze madawa yanapatikana hospitalini ama bado tunaelekea hospitali, tunaelekezwa katika kliniki ambayo iko karibu?
Asante sana. Kwa majina yangu ni Jacob Mwangi. Tunashukuru sana kwa muda ambao serikali ya UDA imechukua nafasi ama imechukua watamu katika taifa la Kenya. Tunajua vizuri sana kwamba tumekuwa na mambo magumu, hasa upande wa KEMSA, ambapo tumejua kwamba kumekuwa na mgogoro muda mrefu, lakini tunatazama tunaona CS ambaye amepewa nyadhifa na rais wa Kenya William Samoei Ruto, ambaye ni Susan Nakhumicha, ameweza kupigana na jambo hilo na kupigana na cartels ambao wamekuwa dawa zikiletwa ili ziweze kupelekwa katika county zinaelekezwa kwingine, lakini tumeona kwamba ameweza kupigana na jambo hilo na tumeona kana kwamba kuna ushindi. Upande wa pili tunaona kwamba serikali na mambo makuu upande wa universal health care, ambao sasa ni jambo ambalo litakuwa linasaidia Wakenya tabaka mbalimbali. Itakuwa kwamba mtu yeyote ambaye amepatikana na ugonjwa, haitajalisha ametoka mbali gani, haitajalisha ametoka kabila gani, haitajalisha yeye ni mdogo ama yeye ni mzee, atapata matibabu katika taifa la Kenya. Kwa hivyo tunaona kuna hatua ambayo imechukuliwa na tunashukuru, ni kwa sababu ya huo mwaka moja wamekuwa katika hatamu, na tunaamini kwamba muda uliobaki wataweza kutenda mambo makuu, na katika hali hiyo tunashukuru. Asante.
Asante sana. Bila shaka ndiyo kauli ya baadhi ya wenyeji kutoka kaunti hii ya Mombasa. kauli kutoka eneo hili la kaunti ya Mombasa, na kutaja tu ni kwamba kaunti ya Mombasa ni mojawapo ya kaunti ambayo imeweza kuchukua harakati mwafaka za kuhakikisha kwamba kila mmoja anapata matibabu ambayo ni ya kumfaa na kuweza matibabu ambayo anaweza kugharamikia. Tuliweza kumwona gavana Abdul Samad Sharif Nassir akiweza kuzindua mpango wa Mombasa Care ambao waliweza kufadhili ambapo wanafadhili familia ambazo hazijiwezi na ile ambayo tunaita bima ya matibabu. Kwa hivyo kutoka upande huu naregesha kwako studioni kutoka kaunti ya Mombasa. Jina langu ni Paul Monio.
Asante sana Paul Munio na wakazi wa Mombasa pia kwa maoni hayo, and we just had to get such reactions because of what the chair speaks of in relation to the question of health, and perhaps one would want to argue that maybe it could be too early to get confused, as Senior says they are confused, or maybe too early to criticize the government because we are at that moment of 1 year. And so, Digwanjiru, you were saying something before, we cut you short.
Yeah, I was saying that these are 365 days of agony, misery, anguish, incompetence, spillage of our resources, 365 days of dealership, breakdown of the rule of law and institutions, and broken promises. So basically we have nothing to show other than hunger.
You've interacted with their manifesto.
I have interacted with their manifesto. Government. I have actually been trying to tick and find out whether there is any achievement that has been done within the 365 days.
How bad compared to previous regimes?
I think if you can draw the number line from 0, they must be going negative.
Hold it there, hold it there. Let's hear what the Economist has to say in relation to this, and especially on matters economy.
Yeah, I'll say, I'll be a bit more positive than my brother here. I would say we're still in setup phase. The organization, they're still trying to organize themselves. 50-50. Even as we're organizing, they're still organizing whatever they're coming on. I would still say we have done some good work. The farmers have had a bit of news. Fertilizer right now, we are seeing some news coming out. In terms of deployment, I've seen teachers being employed. I think a very good number. So I will say...
Hold it, Stuva. I am told that we have to fix that microphone as well. But then again, the conversation continues. And so I think I'll throw it back to George Maringa so that we also get to hear what it is that the lady and the gentleman have to say about the 1-year session of President William Ruto. Judge Maringa, if you can hear me, on your side.
Absolutely, and indeed, quite an interesting, analysis from Wakili over there. And we are looking at the 1 year of the Kenya Kwanza administration. As I did tell you, I'm joined here on my guest by 2 esteemed Kenyans. I have Stella Oyagi, an advocate of the High Court, as well as Chris Otieno, security expert. And I'll begin with you, Stella. This 2/3 gender rule is one issue that has not been implemented over the years. Even as you give your comparative analysis in a general scale, why do you think that we are yet to achieve what we passed in the Constitution?
I think, first of all, the willingness of the government of the day to implement the 2/3 gender rule has been one of the problems. If you look at this current government, even the cabinet itself has not met the threshold. We have 7 women out of 23 in the cabinet. Secretary in the cabinet.
Yes.
We have, 12 principal secretaries out of 51, only 12 women. What does that tell you? When the government, when Dr. Ruto was campaigning, he promised to give women 50% of the seats in his government. We've not attained that. That's a joke. Yeah. And yet, he's the one who's saying, I want to implement the Constitution to fulfill. I hear you, hustler government. I hear you, I understand you, but what he's actually doing is not what he promised. So it's a whole other, I don't know. no one takes it seriously to commit themselves to the law.
Year in, year out, we've not, we've seen that not happening. Apart from willingness, really, what then does that speak to, the electorate that we put into power? Because then they are a reflection of the society. Is it that as a society, we are not yet able, or rather, we are not at a point of embracing the truth as gender role?
Yeah, true. Do we support our women candidates, for example? Mm-hmm. Do we vote for them? Mm-hmm. I know there are counties where the women leadership are a higher percentage than the men, like Nakuru County, the governor, the senator. Mm-hmm. There are counties which are trying, but I don't think it's about the representation, the people per se. Yeah. There is the wave that comes during the electoral period. There is a wave that comes. It's not necessarily about the woman. I want a woman to represent. It's about who is convincing me. It's about who will give me money. Okay. It's about my tribe. So it's also a reflection of us as a society and where we want to see our country in the future. So not necessarily our leaders, but us, because we are the ones who put them in those offices. Yes.
Brilliant. And we will come to you, to more matters regarding, the development and advocacy on women's rights. But I now want to engage Chris Otieno. Chris, you are an expert in issues or matters security. And on the onset of this administration, we did see their resolve to deal with the banditry situation. Of course, lately we've seen the attacks that are happening, in Lamu, in other areas of the country. When you look at the assessment and how this government has handled how it deals with the security situation, are we doing better than we were?
Thank you for having me, number one. Looking at Article 95 of the Constitution, National Assembly and the Senate, the National Assembly did the right thing by supporting declarations, approving declarations. It was declared that it was right time for the Kenyan government to deal with the militia groups that are operating in all these Pokot, Marakwet, and all areas. And the government responded by sending a multi-agency approach. Actually, this time we had three the National Police Service, the Kenya Defense Forces, and the National Police Reservists. And we have seen that over 3 decades, this problem has been a problem in Kenya. But for this particular time in our country, we have seen the number of incidences have gone down. The number of reported flow of arms, illegal arms in the country has gone down because of this kind of approach. And in addition to that, the government has had another strategy where they've adopted the traditional way of conflict resolution, where we are sending our arms of the government, we are sending local elders, we are sending negotiators to negotiate inter-communities to ensure that this one is resolved. On the other part, when you go down to the coastal line, we say that attacks into our country have been reducing in terms of the mass casualty, see as a result of an attack, to now a limited number of persons, soldiers losing their lives from IEDs, vehicle-borne explosive devices. So I would say that in terms of security, our government has been very deliberate, and they've done quite well in terms of ensuring that the peace and tranquility in our country has been really maintained. And a lot needs to be done. That's just the first one. We've seen more years coming, 4 more years. And we hope that they do the best, continually do their best to ensure that, yes, we tackle the complexity of security challenges and we go on to reduce this to as minimum low as is possible.
Absolutely. Indeed, we shall be coming now to what needs to be done. Henceforth, moving forward, 1 year down the line, 4 more to go, and we shall be assessing, other areas, wide areas of this conversation. We want to take a short break right here on People's Court. When we come back, we engage other sectors, other players in the various sectors in the country. Remember, we're not just looking at the health situation. We are looking at all aspects at the cocktail of guests that we have for you here tonight. We've heard from an advocate of the High Court. We've heard from a security expert today. We are going all round to assess how Dr. William Ruto and his government have performed in the last 1 year. Keep your comments coming. We will be sampling them as well as channeling them to our guests as the show progresses. Do stay with us. You're back in a few minutes.
East Africa University, we understand that there are limitless possibilities for brilliant minds. Join us for our September intake for short courses, certificate courses, diploma courses, degree courses, and Master of Business Administration. For more information, you can contact us on 0722 545167. Email us on marketingdepartment@teau.ac.ke or visit our website at www.teau.co.ke to find out more about our programs and how to apply. The East African University, the wellspring of knowledge and character. Finding a home is not always as easy as it may seem. It is a long and tiring process, but here on The Realtor, we will break down all matters real estate to make it easier for you to find your dream home. From interior design to joint ventures, leasing of land, technology, and so much more. Tuesdays, 6:30 p.m.
Radio 47 tuko nawe mchana kutwa na usiku kucha.
Minutes past 10 p.m. right here in Nairobi, Kenya. Good evening. In case you're just joining us, welcome to the People's Court. In case you've been with us, we thank you so much for staying with us tonight. We are continuing to take stock of the Kenya Kwanza administration. The Kenya Kwanza scorecard is what we are calling it tonight. We not only have guests here in studio, we did promise you that we'll take you around the country. Earlier on, we went to Mombasa and spoke to our very own Muniu. We want to cross over now to Nakuru, where our very own Chichi Josephine is on standby. Chichi, good evening. What are the people of Nakuru saying regarding the performance of the Kenya Kwanza administration?
Well, Maringa, very good morning to you. And like you said, we indeed coming live to you from Nakuru County. And the Kenya Kwanza Alliance took over power a year ago. We're promising, of course, to ensure that, or rather promising to lower the cost of living. Among them is also ensuring that cost of food is, of course, lowered. And, of course, ensuring that everything works well, especially when President William Ruto was going on with the campaigns. He promised that within the 100 days in his government, he'll ensure that the cost of living goes down. One thing was to subsidize production and not consumption, as well as reduce reliance on debt and, of course, cut expenditure. But has this, of course, happened? Remember, it's 1 year down the line, and I'm here to get to know the views of residents from Nakuru County to tell me what they think about the president, or rather President William Ruto's performance in the first 1 year in office. I'll start with you, Bwana Kimani. Yes. Thank you so much kwa kuzungumza nasi. Nieleze, hadi sasa ni mwaka mmoja ndani ya ama Rais William Ruto amekuwa kitawala. Labda hadi sasa unahisi kwamba baadhi ya masuala ambayo aliweza kuahidi wakati wa kampeni ameyatimiza?
La hasha, kwa sababu mimi naona serikali zilizopita hapo awali, tunayo serikali ya Kibaki chini ya siku 100 tulikuwa tayari tumeleta nidhamu katika sekta ya matatu. Madereva walikuwa wamepata sare, wale makondakta wao pia walikuwa wamepata sare za kuvalia, na nidhamu ilikuwa imerejelea barabarani. Serikali ya Uhuru na Ruto pia chini ya siku 100 tulikuwa tumepata yule aliyekuwa waziri Matiang'i alikuwa ameleta nidhamu pia katika mabasi ya shule. Basi za shule zilikuwa zimepata rangi ya majano na vile zikawa na nidhamu. Lakini chini ya uongozi wa serikali ya Kenya Kwanza tuliahidiwa mengi. Tuliahidiwa kwamba bei ya bidhaa muhimu, bei ya petroli, bei ya unga itapata kushuka chini ya zile siku 100. Lakini chini ya hizo siku 100 yale ambayo tuliahidiwa hatujaweza kutimiziwa. Yale peke yake ambayo wameweza kuyatimiza naona ni kuzidua miradi ambayo tayari hapo awali ilikuwa imezuduliwa na Rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta. Lile tu ambalo naweza lifurahia kwa siku 100 za serikali ya Ruto ni kwamba ameweza kuajiri walimu takribani 35,000. Hiyo ikiwa ni improvement kubwa sana. Amepiga hatua mzuri mno kwa sababu ile serikali yao ya hapo awali waliweza kuajiri walimu 5,000 kwa mwaka.
Na kuhusiana na gharama ya maisha unahisi vipi, imepanda ama inashuka kulingana naye?
Kila kitu kimedorora, maisha yamekuwa magumu mno. Hatuwezi kutoka hata nje ya manyumba, wale wanafunzi wetu, watoto wetu hatuwezi kukimu karo ya shule. Maisha yamekuwa magumu mno.
Kuanzia 1 hadi 10 utaipa serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ngapi kuhusiana na kushusha gharama ya maisha?
3 juu ya 10. Hata lile ambalo tunalifurahia tu ni kwamba hawajaangusha ugatuzi, kwa sababu hapa Nakuru kama si ugatuzi tungekuwa tumepata barabara ya kutoka Utamaduni hadi Getare. Drainages zetu hazingekuwa zimewekwa zile kalvati, maji hangekuwa yamepita. Kwa hivyo tufurahie ugatuzi, lakini uongo mwingi tuache.
Naam, shukrani sana Bwana Kimani. Wewe labda kauli yako kwa ufupi sana, unahisi kwamba yule ambaye ni Rais William Ruto amefanya kazi ndani ya mwaka mmoja?
Mimi naitwa kama Richard Uwasi mwenye Kaptembo ya machina yangu kwanza. Inakuwa naisi pande ya Kaptembo ya madam. Lakini napebea stichanga hapa toto koreni na koro. Lakini hiyo maisha nche naangalia ukweli inasemeka hata stima saisi ukiangalia kabisa stima imepanda bei. Ukiangalia stima hata mate utoka huko Masamba Kisii huko Masimba Nyalibali Masimba Keroka. Yenyewe unaambiwa stima imepanda bei. Nini? Mam, Kwani tena umemaliza tena stima?
Ndio. Labda nizungumze na mwingine. Wewe ndani ya mwaka moja ya Rais William Ruto unahisi kwamba gharama ya maisha imeshuka ama imepanda?
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Jackson Abuga. Lakini mimi naona gharama ya maisha itapanda. Kwa sababu wanasema chakula imerudi chini. Lakini kama mafuta inaendelea kupanda, sasa unaona maisha itarudi chini.
Na unatarajia kwamba itashuka?
Sioni kama itashuka kwa sababu kila kitu inaenda juu. Kama hii mambo ya wanasema ushuru inapanda, haiwezi kushuka.
Na hadi sasa ni mwaka mmoja tangia yule ambaye ni Rais William Ruto kuingia mamlakani. Kuanzia 1 hadi 10 utamupa ngapi hivi? Maki ngapi hivi?
4.
Kwa nini 4?
Nampa 4 kwa sababu kuna mambo yale amefanya kidogo, lakini ingine hajafanya.
Unahisi kwamba bado hajafanya?
Hajafanya kama security bado. Upande wa security bila tunaendelea security kama Nakuru hapa security imekuwa mbaya.
Shukran. Kidogo tu niambie, wewe ndani ya mwaka mmoja wa Rais William Ruto unahisi kana kwamba amefanya kazi?
Amefanya kazi. Ya.
Ipi sasa?
Amefanya kazi kwa sababu bottom up. Hakuna maneno mingi. Serikali
gharama ya maisha imeshuka kama alivyoahidi?
Imeshuka kidogo. Mafuta tu kidogo imepanda, lakini hii serikali iko sawa.
Iko sawa.
Pesa iko sahihi. Ruto anaendelea kazi. Na hakuna kusema bottom up. Sasa kila mtu akae na maisha yake. Kuna kwa sufuria kichwa na ufanye kazi. Ruto anafanya kazi. Na hiyo pesa iko hata kwa M-Pesa utapata. Hiyo ni mzuri. Hakuna mambo kusema hapana. Iko sawa.
Kwa wewe ako sawa.
Ako sawa. Hiyo mwaka moja na hakuna kitu kwa mfuko. Sasa tuko na pesa kidogo. Hiyo ni serikali mzuri.
Sawa.
Yeah.
Therefore, Maringa, those are sentiments from Nakurians, of course, explaining what they feel is the President William Ruto's performance in his first year in office. And of course, according to the polling, the polling that was, opinion poll that was done by the Infotrack, of course, they said that President William Ruto was ranked, or rather has been ranked at 55% in his first year in office. And for those who had said that he performed average were 40%, and for those who said that he had performed poorly were 30%. And therefore, understand that we have also talked to residents in Nakuru County who feel that this particular government have made more misses than hits. So that is all we have from this particular county. Over to you, Maringa. My name is Chichi Josephine.
Thank you so much for the wonderful job, staying all night, or rather till right now. Thank you so much also for the views coming in from Nakuru County, various rankings of the performance of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the leadership of President William Ruto. I want to take you over to Victor Muyakane for a further assessment. Victor, over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Linda, welcome. Once again, good people, if you've forgotten, Linda is a lawyer and she's got particular areas of insight and interest and experience. Data protection, sexual and gender-based violence, as well as intellectual property. Linda, straight to you. From where you sit, where are the gaps 1 year down the line?
I'd love to take us a step back. When this administration took office, there are certain things that were marked, you can identify. The cost of living was extremely high. And with that, definitely, there are certain things that you get to note trickling down. There was outright, like daylight robbery. And even marked with that, you'd find instances where people were being robbed, even women being robbed. And sadly, people were recording this robberies being taking place. With this administration, we found a huge gap for me, where we were told that eCitizen was hacked. That's a dangerous spot to be in as a government. From our end...
so that's an area of data protection.
Yes.
It doesn't instill confidence to hear that eCitizen was hacked.
Yes, because we are going to a spot where we want to have IDs being taken, and this ID will be covering every aspect of your life. So how secure is that vis-a-vis that you're having that eCitizen platform being hacked? How much more exposed will we be as Kenyans, where when you have that instance where all your data is exposed?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's an interesting point, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Job, welcome. Job joins us from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. From where you sit, our manufacturers, where are the gaps 1 year down the line?
The gaps are real because as an association, our interest is to drive global competitiveness of the manufacturing sector in the country. And what we have seen, and especially through the Finance Act 2023, is a clawback on the promises that have been made by Kenya Kwanza administration in their manifesto. So the happiness level among the manufacturers is a bit low, and it's because one thing, if you look at the cost of input, for instance, when you talk about the taxation, look at the excess duty regime. It's almost on every other product, including even water that you drink every day, of which is a necessity. When you're talking about like the VAT on some of the inputs that we are looking at how they're going to spur growth of the value chains in the country. For instance, like now the input to farming, some of them are at an exempt status, not the VAT status that they were at before. Exempt status is more costlier to the manufacturers and to the uptakers of the products that are being made. There's even a case that has been put in court over some of the levies that are being charged. I cannot discuss about that here.
Right.
But if you see a manufacturer getting to that extent, and we believe in boardroom discussion with the government, that just know that things are not very right.
Things are not good. Yeah. And we have, of course, our CPA here, CPA ST Wainaina.
Yes.
You're a lender. You're also an economist and an accountant. How are we doing? Where are the gaps from where you sit?
Thank you. When this government took over 365 days ago, we were told that the economy was dilapidated. And during the campaigns, President William Ruto prioritized uchumi. So the big question we ask ourselves, what steps has the government taken to rehabilitate the economy? Of course, we know the economy wasn't dilapidated because it was growing at an average of 5%. What we have seen this government has become very aggressive in terms of imposing more taxes, wanting to collect more money. And from an economist point of view, there is almost a convergence of opinion that our challenge as a country is not a revenue problem. Our problem is an expenditure problem. And the president hasn't...
So you mean to tell us we're living beyond our means? Is that what you're saying?
Of course. We are too extravagant. I think, you see, it's a simple manifestation of that extravagance, the motorcades that you see around from very junior officers in the public service going up to the chief executive. We are extremely extravagant. Even the way the government was constituted, it's extravagant. Because you ask yourself, if the Constitution allows for a maximum of 23 CSs, why do you have 50-something PSs? We have reduced the PSs to heads of departments. You find one ministry has about 4 PSs doing what? I worked in government at a very senior level, and nowadays being a PS is not as prestigious as it used to be. So we have a bloated government, and we thank the judiciary for putting a stop of some of those recruitments, for example, CASs.
Right.
So the government hasn't demonstrated its frugality in terms of how it utilizes our taxes. Instead, you are imposing more taxes. You don't grow an economy through taxation, because you are withdrawing disposable income from people, and when people have less to spend, manufacturers will create lesser jobs, etc., etc. So are we going to grow that way? We won't.
That's a good question. And I like the connection you've drawn and the points you've made, and hopefully our people at home are getting a few pointers. Back to you, Job. I want us to shift the conversation a little bit from gaps to solutions. It's a big conversation. If we're here to point out all the things that have gone wrong, we'll be here all night and all week. What are the solutions? Let's shift the conversation towards solutions, and hopefully this is something we'll take along the way for the rest of the conversation. From where you sit, what areas do you want to be looked at for the next 365 years of this government?
One thing is that in the last 1 year, we have seen the cost of power increase. Before, we were at around $16 per kilowatt per hour. Now we're at around 19. And if you compare with our peers in the region, they were oscillating below 10 cents US dollar per kilowatt per hour. Looking at how the government in the next 365 days, how it's going to reduce on the cost of power in the country. And we have very practical solutions that we have discussed with the ministry and even Kenya Power. One, system losses. They start at 22.5. How can we reduce this to 13.5, or even we get an average of 17%? And subsequently, you see almost 6 billion cash shillings are going back to the pocket of the consumer. When you're talking about the renewable energy and shutting down some of the thermal producers, that's another big solution, because you again save a lot. We have given a solution of 32 billion cash shillings that can be saved on the cost of power. That's one huge area that people are complaining about. Talk about taxation. My good friend here has talked about you don't tax businesses out of their businesses. And that's what Kenya Kwanza administration is doing. You find that every day the standard levy has been reviewed. It has been there, yes, for the last 30 years, but it has been reviewed in a very huge way. From 400, capped at 400,000 cash shillings per year, and there's some other companies that are likely now to be paying 60 million cash shillings per year. So how are those companies going to survive? Right. Let's look at how, even if you can review because it's been there for 30 years, how can it be reviewed and make it more sustainable?
Right.
And the other issues also that we can look at. For instance, when you're talking about the fiscal deficit that is there, we are, yes, collecting enough revenues, but if you look at the excesses in the part of the government, we need to see
the frugality he's
yes,
talking about.
you need to see a reduction of the same. The previous regime talked about 2.2 billion Kenyan shillings that are lost every day. We have not seen a solution. We have only seen solutions on increment as far as the taxation measures are concerned. But we have not seen solutions on, major solutions on addressing how can we reduce the loss of 2.2 billion shillings every year, which comes to about 750 billion Kenyan shillings every year. If
so that's
that
something
money,
you'd like to see different?
Yes. If that money gets back to the government, we don't even have a deficit in our budget.
All right. Linda, from where you sit, I know you have something that's on your heart that you'd like to share. Please, as quick as you can.
I think for me, my pet project is on gender-based violence, and on the build-up that the Uhuru government had made in terms of protecting the women against gender-based violence. We need to build up more on that. And the biggest thing I think we should focus on is creating more opportunities, creating more opportunities for women, and even the legislations that we've made so far. Are we able to build up on that? Are we able to reinforce on that so that we create more opportunities, but above all, secure the place of women, secure their security, secure their place even within their homes and even within the corporate space. The legislations we passed, the Mongos and all that, can we reinforce them? Let them not just be on paper. Let's have them actually enforced.
If there's one thing you'd like to see in the next 365 days, what would that be? The next 1 year of Kenya Kwanza government, what would that be in terms of SGBV?
In the last month, there was a rejection of the marriage bill. And there are a lot of gains that would have been achieved if that bill was enforced in terms of maintenance, in terms of sharing of property, marital, for women within the marriage space. So for me, there would be more need to review the gains in that bill and have it passed as well.
Right, thank you so much. We'll come back and talk about more solutions in a little bit, but I'd like to pass it on to my colleagues, Linda Alela. Linda, what solutions does your panel have to offer in terms of the next 1 year of Kenya Kwanza government? Thank you.
Well, solutions for those ones who argue that we have problems like Wakili Ndegwa Njiru, who is a critique of the government, and perhaps, a couple of things that needs to be adjusted in the health sector. I know we cannot unpack all this, but generally, I mean, we had the CS for health here yesterday. Yes. She spoke to a raft of matters and, plans that the government has. Why? I mean, you as the medics, don't you have faith that there's light at the end of the tunnel based on how the events are being run?
You see, it's not about having faith. There's things that we must be able to do. And I have kept on saying that we must take bold and deliberate steps. We have so many policies, so many documents, very nice, well done, that we have made here in Kenya, being utilized in other countries, like the UHC blueprint being implemented in Rwanda is ours. But we're having our CECs and chief officers going to Rwanda to benchmark, yet we have not implemented in our country. And why is this? And I just want to focus on those promises that are focused on the health human resource, because there is no health without a health human resource. That is the health workers. And there are 4 promises that we were given and Kenyans were given that have not actually been either achieved, or we don't actually see the efforts to ensure that we implement this. One of them, we were told that within 100 days, we would employ 20,000 healthcare workers, and then annually we have progressively staffing improvements.
At that point you were listening,
Yes.
to this promise. Did you think that it was something that would be easily actualized? Because it's one thing to be promised. It's another to sit down and critically look at these promises and argue that this one can be actualized, this one can be implemented, this one cannot. This one, is Dr. Nyingi kama one of the persons, who has said this in Nakuru County.
Yes. So sure, let me say that it is something that is achievable. And the reason why I'm saying this, it is because the government itself, in 2013, signed by the Minister for Health by then, C.S. Macharia, when he was attending a conference in Brazil, a HRH conference in Brazil, committed and signed that for Kenya to achieve UHC, they needed to employ 12,000 healthcare workers annually. That is a promise of the government. And if a minister makes a commitment, I believe it was informed by those who had done the maths and all the processes that are supposed to be involved. We have not actually employed, since 2013, in that decade, we have not actually been able to employ that number. The other thing, and I think the CS talked about it yesterday, is about harmonization of engagement terms. We are having, like the UHC staff, we are having so many contracts that are irregular, where you find people doing the same job are paid different salaries. That is discrimination, and Article 27 of the Constitution, and Wakili is here. And you make the work of health workers not to be dignified. In fact, in future, if we continue in the trajectory that we are going, in future, there is no kid of this country who will actually want to study hard and be a doctor or be a clinical officer or a nurse.
Well, that is one sector. Wakili, I am
Yes.
glad that you mentioned that, this then would snowball. If not snowball, then these troubles will end, at the door of the legal spaces. So here we are, and Wakili says, well, it's been about history and all that, and the fact that we have been in concept of court on numerous cases that we can cite. Wakili, do you suppose it's the dream team that is letting down the president? And the dream team, I know we will touch on the CSS, we'll touch on numerous and different sectors and different, board members and all the characters and figures that are placed to help the president achieve some of these dreams.
Linda, I think I will be stretching my imagination beyond human limits if I would think that the Kenya Kwanza is constituted of any dream team. Because Kenya Kwanza administration knows not any aspect of meritocracy. They did not invest in meritocracy. They do not invest in competence. They invest in machinations and dealership.
There are legal ways to address some of these matters, Wakili.
Yes,
Perhaps
I'm coming to that.
Concern. Yes.
Because the Kenya Kwanza government is being run like a criminal enterprise. For one reason, Linda, that we have been able to run down all the institutions. If you look at the institution of the DPP, which is a very important institution in codification and solidification of this democracy. That institution is a moribund. It's not working. If you look at the institutions that are supposed to help us control this spillage, like the EACC, it is under the control and under the actuation of individuals. If you look at, if you go to the judiciary, that is where corruption reigns. There are some courts that cannot fit to be described as sanctuaries.
What are we talking about, the laws of the land, when we say this? It could be about the president and how the Kenya Kwanza government is handling matters, but are you trying to tell us that we do not have legal prospects that will help us address some of these matters?
We do have.
Then why?
But
then
for
why
them
is it that we're here?
Yeah, for them that comes from the lake, they say that the fish will always rot from the head.
Yes.
If you look at the institution of parliament, parliament has completely been hijacked by the executive. Remember, Parliament is supposed to exercise oversight of all these issues that I'm pointing out tonight. They are supposed to hold the executive to account. They are supposed to ensure that the executive is run in a transparent manner, that the rule of law is observed. But that is not what is happening.
Are you telling us to close shop? Are you telling us to close the country or sell the country and everyone gets...
that.
Then what?
I am calling upon Kenyans to remain vigilant. Vigilant in the sense that they must insist that the Constitution must be followed to the letter, that the rule of law must be the one that reigns, that people have fidelity to the rule of law, because in the absence of the rule of law, then you see this mismanagement of government.
Are Kenyans act to a point where some of these matters they would want to address in the best way they know how? Tuva.
Just repeat your question.
Are Kenyans act to that level where then they would say, well, at this very point, we want the rule of law, followed as should be. We want the Constitution followed as it should be. Are they act to a point where they will say, well, it's extremely expensive for us to manage in this very country, so something has to be done?
Yeah, I'll say Kenyans are in a tough situation, but I don't feel that we are really acting, right? We realize that people are suffering, people in business, the dollar is rising every single day. Of course, we don't live in a vacuum. There's the US trying to, sweep up the dollars and all that.
So I'll say that, yes, we're hurting, yes, but maybe we're not the culture of, bringing up such, such kind of, issues like Ghana and the other guys. Yeah.
All right. And so Wakili says that, we probably do not have a dream team. Quickly, I am imagining, say, the ministries, and these are people who are vetted at the level of parliament. And Wakili says, well, the parliament has been captured. But was it captured right from the onset, from the time the people of Kenya voted this individual in? And what does this say about the electorate?
At this point, it's really about the electorate. Realize some of these people are not really brought in, except for the legislature, of course. Some of these people are brought in by the head of state and his people. So it might have a bit of, it's a kickback. You help me get here, so let me help you get to this particular point. So we do have some elements of that, but I'm sure to some point they are very cautious or conscious about what they're doing. So you realize that maybe guided. That's why we have so many PSs trying to help them out. But I think, in my view, I feel yes, the Kenyans are suffering, but this particular government is actually trying.
I will come back to understand what is the role of the people. Quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, on 30 seconds, you must remember that the head of state is the one that's supposed to breathe confidence, both locally and domestically and internationally. But when you go and have somebody kidnapped, and he's hidden, and it so happens that it is the system in government that has executed that heinous act.
Allegations.
Then you go and tell people that you must withdraw these cases. What confidence are you breathing to international investors?
You are a legal mind.
We're
not going to base our arguments on allegations.
Yes. No, let me go to the issues of the withdrawal of the cases, the one the president spoke about. You see, one issue about transparency and the rule of law is for me to know that if I am wronged, I'll go to the court of law, and the court of law will resolve that issue.
I will go back to remind you, Wakili, that the president, while he is the president, is within the court to determine a case and say whether it is worth being withdrawn or not.
No, but some individuals who went before the court were coerced, duressed, and intimidated, and they were told that lazima mutoe hizo makesi.
Let's throw it to...
What economy and what country are we developing here?
George Maringa, what country and economy are we developing
what democracy?
Here? George.
Indeed, quite a discussion right here in studio. I'm still here with my guests. Just to remind you, a legal expert, or rather a legal mind here on my side of the studio, that is Stella Oyagi, an advocate of the High Court, as well as the Chris Otieno, a security expert. And of course, now back again to Stella. When you look at the whole approach of this two-thirds gender rule, gender mainstreaming, development and advocacy on women's rights and sexual and reproductive rights in this country, does it inspire confidence on the approach taken so far, and perhaps what would be some of the remedies that would need to be applied to cure the situation that we are seeing ourselves in?
This government, like many others, has been very non-committal on the implementation of two-third gender rule, and even addressing the various women's rights issues in the country. Looking at the current executive, he promised one thing, he did the opposite. Confidence. I will propose that this particular government, the legislators, enact an act specific to addressing the two-third gender rule.
Absolutely.
That
and just hold on to that thought. Let's go to Nyeri and pick the the views of the Kenyans there. Earlier on, our reporter spoke to the residents in Nyeri. Let's cross over live and listen to their sentiments.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, I'm coming to you live from Nyeri town. And with me, I'm having a section of residents here whom I just want to engage concerning the performance of Kenya Kwanza government regarding the fight against corruption. And of course, I just want to go directly to them just to listen in, to get to understand what they think about Kenya Kwanza government fighting corruption. Thank you so much. Ukisonga tu hapa karibu. Hivi wewe kama Mkenya wa hapa Nyeri, unadhani kwamba serikali ya Kenya Kwanza katika mwaka mmoja uliopita imefanya kazi ya kutosha kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba ufisadi unakomeshwa?
Kwangu naweza sema wamejaribu kama 40% wamejaribu, lakini hakuna kwa mbali juu ile ufisadi na kuanga nchi yenyewe ni ufisadi ya hali ya juu. Sasa tunaombea na pia sana president apambana nao kabisa. Hivyo wanasema mambo ni matatu, akitaka kunyonga mtu anyonge.
Na unadhani kwamba labda wakipewa nafasi zaidi wanaweza fanya bora zaidi kulingana na sai?
Wanaweza fanya mzuri, manake tunaona venye wameanza ile pressure wameanza nayo kufika na ufisadi, inaonekana wanaweza toboa. Hata kama si yote, anaweza kutoa tukiwa 60 ama 70% huko.
Asante. Pia acha niweze kuzungumza na mwingine hapa. Kaka, sijui wewe kwa muonekano wako, serikali ya Kenya Kwanza kwa mwaka mmoja sasa, unadhani imefanya kazi ya kutosha kuweza kupigana na ufisadi?
Okay, kwa majina naitwa Joseph Nyaga. Okay, kwangu unaweza sema kwamba wamejaribu sana, kwa sababu tumeangalia kama mambo na corruption imeishaisha kidogo, lakini kuna jambo moja tu naweza kuuliza serikali yenyewe sasa yenye iko. Tunajua kwamba wanachukua taxes. So kitu moja wanaweza tuelezea, hizi taxes wanachukua, wako sure aje zitafanya kazi? Kwa sababu wale tu makatero tu bado wako. Kwa sababu taxi wanachukua taxi zetu. Wako sure aje hizi zitakuja tena zitarudi huko. So kwa sababu unapata maybe mwisho bado itarudi tu pale tulikuwa. So wanaweza tuelezea aje itakuwa aje kama hizi pesa bado zitani.
Shukrani sana. Pia acha niweze kuzungumza na mwingine hapa. Hivi kama mkazi wa hapa Nyeri, unadhani kwamba serikali imefanya kila jitihada kupigana na ufisadi ili kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba maendeleo yanafanikishwa hapa nchini?
Mimi nikiangalia serikali ya Kenya Kwanza hakuna kitu imefanya mwaka mzima, kwa sababu wananchi wameteseka sana, gharama maisha imepanda, vijana hawana ajira. Sasa ukiangalia mwaka huo mzima hakuna kitu wananchi wamepata, kwa sababu hata gharama ya kununua chakula imekuwa juu sana, na tuliahidiwa kwamba Biblia ikiwekwa chini gharama ya maisha itashuka.
Unadhani kwamba gharama ya maisha kuwa juu ina kuwa affected na corruption yenye inaendelea nchini?
Nikiangalia upande wa corruption hakuna kitu wamefanya, kwa sababu ukiangalia watu kama Mada kama wale walifanya corruption, wale walikuwa upande wa serikali waliondolewa mashtaka. Sasa nikiangalia naona wale ambao wanasukumwa sana ni wale wako katika vyama vya upinzani.
Naam, wacha pia niweze kuzungumza na wa mwisho hapa. Kaka, ukiangalia kesi za ufisadi ambazo zimeweza kuweza kutupiliwa mbali zingine, hivi unadhani kwamba serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ina ile nia kamili ya kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba ufisadi unakomeshwa?
Acha niseme ufisadi inakomeshwa kabisa na hii serikali. Nasikia akisema mambo ni matatu, uhame Kenya, uende biguni ama jera. Ufisadi saa hizi iko sawa kabisa, huwezi complain. Unaona hadi anaingilia ma-CS wake, hapo iko sawa.
Wewe kama Mkenya ungependa kuambia nini wale wa viongozi ambao unadhani kwamba ni wafisadi?
Watamurikwa na watapatana na mkono ya serikali.
Of course, thank you so much. They are just a section of members here who've just talked to us, talking about the efforts of the government, and as we've heard, we have a very different opinions concerning this issue, and of course they are saying it will be better if the government hastens these chances or doing more to ensure that we have corruption cases dealt with. Olo Hores from Nyeri County.
Horace, thank you so much for joining us from Nyeri County. We've had quite a reverberating discussion that was going on offline, and I want to come back to you, Stella. When you look at what you'd like to see in the next 4 years, what are some of the solutions that perhaps would cure the situation in terms of this 2/3 gender rule for a government that was keen during the campaign season to say that they're advocating for women's rights and being able to include women in leadership positions?
As I was saying, as much as Dr. Ruto, during his campaign period, he promised 50% representation of women in his government, he has not been able to do that.
Okay.
Similar to other previous governments, none of them have been committal on that issue. I think it's just proper that the legislatures come up with a statute specific to addressing the 2/3 gender rule. That way it's binding on our leaders. And it should start from the top. The executive should implement the 2/3 gender rules. That way it trickles down to other state agencies and government institutions. That particular law should also incorporate the marginalized persons with disabilities, so that it is not just about the nomination. Yes, it is in the constitution, but it should be entrenched so that if you don't do this, then someone can challenge it in court. You remember in 2017, the Constitutional Court gave a directive that Parliament should be dissolved within 60 days if it failed to enact that particular or a legislation encompassing that. But that never happened. The government of the day then handed over with no action being taken up to date. So the government is not committal.
Okay.
We should
so
push
legislation is what I'm hearing from you.
Yes.
Is that the only thing?
Let's start with legislation and policies. I know if we start with the key statute, then policies can be put in place within the various government institutions and other offices on the 2/3 gender principle. Because if we leave this only to us, the voters, we are swayed by different things when it comes to now the election itself, the voting. Because I may want to be represented by a woman, but because of other factors, maybe my vote is bought or other factors, I may not, at that particular point of casting my vote, I may change my mind because of other factors.
Before we go to Chris, just briefly, the adherence to the rule of law in this administration, adherence to the judgments issued by the courts, are we seeing this government implementing it better? Are they following what the courts say? Do they need to improve? Do they need, to perhaps be different from what you've seen in the previous governments?
I would say that no. This particular government, just like others, they don't really follow the rule of law strictly. They want to. It is like a show of might. I am mightier because and this probably comes from the fact that these institutions, the various actors in the justice system, they rely on this same government for funding. So there's no independence. You would feel you want to push this agenda this way, but then at the backside of it, your funds are limited. That way, so that you toe in line with what the government wants, unfortunately. So no, this government does not really follow the rule of law as it should be.
And so you're parting short as we, hand over to Chris?
We should do better.
Okay.
This government should do better in terms of applying the law, in terms of looking out for the interests of the Mwananchi.
Absolutely. Indeed. Chris, now, earlier on, I did see you nodding and, interested to contribute to some of the remarks, from the other panelists. But even as you respond, what would you like to see being implemented better in the security sector?
There are a number of things I'd like to see being implemented. The first one will be legislative output. Here, we're talking about what is happening in the National Assembly and what is happening in the Senate. All motions, all bills, all statements, petitions, all should be resolved that pertain to security. The next thing that I'm seeing would be better for our country is adoption of e-security, right? We can adopt, for example, drone technology to try as much as is possible to trace the many people who are disappearing in Boni Forest and coming out and executing these bad things that really continually take the lives of our citizens, our defense forces, and things like that. Right? I also think in terms of collaborations, we need to advance our collaboration to include international cooperation so that our security apparatus are pretty well equipped and be able to combat all the complexities in security that face our country. Above that, from legislations which you'll see a spring out of, for example, increment in the number of security persons, the ratio of security persons against the citizen. UN advocates for 1:400. If you look at what we have right now in our countries, 1:1,200, pretty high number. But I'm very happy to say that just the other day we've concluded recruitment in the military, and I hope we can continue on to recruit more and more Kenyan citizens to join either police forces or the entire Kenya Defense Force. Right. In response to what one of our panelists said about state perpetuated abductions, I'd like to say one thing. The president of this country took an oath that he will defend this country within the limits of the Constitution of Kenya to ensure that this country is well protected. Now, look at what we are saying. Countrywide, to include global dynamics, the price of food and commodities is pretty high. Right? To include sugar. What you would buy some very few cents or coins or shillings some years back is now inflatable. Now, here we are saying that we are alleging and actually going ahead to say that it is state perpetuated. And that is being said by a lawyer, not a common Mwananchi like myself or somebody else. If the president took that kind of an oath, and there is evidence that the sugar industry is being manipulated by individuals, then we will say what any other advanced economy in the globe would say. All options are placed on the table. And we have seen after this stern action was taken, what happened? These matters were taken to court, stopping Mumias, for example, sugar company, from continuing these activities of sugar manufacturing, being removed from court. Okay. You need to ask yourself one question. The lawyer said, there's corruption in the judiciary. Is he not a member of the entire judiciary? Is he not practicing in that? Why were those cases taken to court not concluded in time or on time to ensure that all these roadblocks stopping sugar processing in this country and increasing the price or doing something that affects Mwananchi, that has also ripple effects in security, how come they were not resolved in the right time?
Perhaps, Ndegwa Njiru, that was the point you want to respond?
It's fair that he does.
It's fair that I respond.
Yes.
That for me, I'm just an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with very little ability to control the corruption in the judiciary, because the corruption in the judiciary has actually been entertained by the system that be. In matter of fact, what we are simply saying is that these countries' institutions have degenerated to the extent that they are not responding to the Mwananchi's plight. You know, we only saw one case of one individual being intimidated by the head of state to withdraw the cases. But you're also forgetting that through the same process, individuals who had criminal cases as bad as those of murders ended up becoming ministers in this government. Some of them had cases of rape, ended up becoming ministers in government. Others have threatened the media. And I don't want to mention their name, it's not worth for this debate. But they are still serving. Nobody is holding them to account.
Wakili, why would one want to contract you to work on their case so that you would go and argue this?
Kenyans are no longer going to court.
At a court that is...
Linda, it's terrible. Kenyans are no longer going to court because of the kind
but Wakili, we've seen you representing a couple of people.
You know, we have, for me, from where I sit, I have to point out on these vices,
right,
so that Kenyans may understand the kind of the democracy that they are priding themselves on or for.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move this conversation forward. Perhaps, Chris, as you, a parting shot, as you perhaps respond as well.
I would like to say that let us be very pragmatic with issues. And the pragmatism here is, let us not say that we have, in this kind of a say that we have a criminal in the government. Has that person been charged or proven guilty or not charged or proven guilty? If we don't have that, then it's wrong to sit here and say that we have criminals there, right? From a security perspective, where I sit from, we are the ones who arrest people and take them to court. But when we take them to court, for a lawyer to take that up, we must provide evidence. Lawyer corroborates that evidence or presents in court, because that is an area that we are not, right? So I'm saying it is better, we're very pragmatic in this country, stop false accusations, and use quantitative metrics in measuring our performance. I'm very happy to say from where I'm seated that the Ministry of Interior, the CS Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, and Adan Duale have been mentioned by Kenyans, fellow Kenyans like myself, as the best performing CSs. Are we seeing anybody from the legal being mentioned? We have not yet seen. We need to see this kind of pragmatic approach to issues in this issue.
Absolutely. Indeed, quite interesting points that I raised. I want to hand you over back to Victor Muyakane for the home stretch of this conversation, perhaps what you'd like to see moving forward. Over to you, Victor.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you, George. Thank you. I mean, our panelists are on fire this evening.
Absolutely.
Sharing with us their views. But in the spirit of sharing takeaways, something that our audience, our lovely audience that are watching us tonight can take home with them, I want to come back to my people here. And I'll start with you, Job. From where you sit, what do our manufacturers need to see for the next 4 years in order to be satisfied with the performance of this government?
Thank you. There are 4 critical areas as manufacturers that we are looking at in the next 4 years. And these 4 areas are to ensure that we are driving jobs creation, we are driving investments, we are driving manufacturing GDP to contribution to the GDP, and also export growth. These 4 areas are global competitiveness. And under global competitiveness, there's a few areas that I mentioned. And we are looking at how the government can continue addressing this more and more. Worldwide, we started at 115th position out of a possible 152 countries in terms of competitiveness of the goods that we produce. We need to become more cost effective and ensure that we are not taxing manufacturers out of their businesses, or because it's easy to come and tax them because they're formalized. It's good to look at how we can reduce their tax rate and increase the tax base. I talked about the cost of power, I talked about the cost of labor, and many other issues that need to be looked at that pillar. Then we have the second pillar, we have SME development. SME comprise the biggest portion of manufacturers in the country. They employ almost 80% of those who are working in the manufacturing sector, and not only in the manufacturing sector, even in these other sectors. We need to look at how they can have more of the market penetration, how we can have governance systems on them, how we can have access to finance without collateral, because that's what is killing them today.
It's a major obstacle.
It's a major obstacle. And the third thing is that no country will grow without export potential. So we have the pillar that we call export-led growth. And in this export-led growth, we are looking at how we can drive exportation. The reason why we have poor exchange rate today against the hard currencies.
Yeah, tell us. That's something a lot of Kenyans are wondering about.
Yes, we are at 153 shillings to the dollar as of today. And that's a bit worrying. It's because we are a net importer. We have heavy dependency on the hard currency so that we can do the international trade, bringing that trade into the nation, rather than having our own manufactured goods, value-added goods in the country, and exporting them so that we come back with the hard currency. That's one major issue that has really cost this.
So what would you
country.
like to see different?
What I would like to see is that we have monetary policy mechanisms that are implemented by the Central Bank of Kenya. We need to look at the interest rates and how it can be optimized. We need to look at the floating of the shilling in the country. We need to drive exportation of manufactured goods. I can give you an example of like now tea. Tea we export 3% in raw. If we do value addition of the other 97%, there is huge potential for bringing hard currency into the country instead of selling it when it is in raw form.
Right.
And we have done analysis of 13 sectors. We have done analysis of 32 value chains which have export potential. If they're supported by the government, we can see the reversal of what is happening as far as the exchange is concerned. The last one, let me talk about it.
Yes, please, real quick.
It's on agriculture for industry. This is an agrarian nation. Agriculture for industry is a very important pillar that also we need to look at in the next 4 years. That's where the cotton to textile is. That's where the hide and skin to leather product is. That's where we have the edible oils. That's where we have many other products that we can value add in the country and put some fiscal regime that will encourage that consumption of what is produced in the country and discourage what is being imported. And in this ecosystem, we have the jobs, we have the investment, we have something like inflation being checked, we have the exchange rate against the hard currencies also being checked.
I certainly hope that your organization is interfacing with government over these same things that you'd like to see, so that you give them the direct feedback and what to do about them. We're just about to shift to Bungoma in a second, but our good accountant here, our CPA, please talk to us a little bit more about what you'd like to see over the next 4 years for this government.
Two things. Let me first of all comment on something my colleague has said over there regarding Mr. Jiru's comment. You know, in the public sector, when you are managing public affairs, perception is more important than the truth. What people perceive out there is more important. That was one of the key lessons I learned in government.
Sometimes it's more than reality.
It's more important than the facts.
Right.
So how the government manages that perception, that it is not a criminal enterprise, that's about communication. That's up to the government. So we can't come here to defend government. They have a communications department. That's their staff.
All right.
Regarding what my colleague has said, you know, we have to manage people's expectations. The main concern in Infotruck's survey is the cost of living. We want to tell Wajiko they are the hustlers. This cost of living stuff is not going to come down in the next 365 days. Because the reason why the cost of living, the unga is so high and et cetera, is because we are not producing enough. And in the short term and medium term, you are not going to change production. And this government, in the 365 days, it has not proved that it supports what my colleague is saying.
Right.
Simply, why? Because this government is keen to use their campaign financials, the cartels, to kill the local industries. We have seen brokers being given tenders, multi-billion tenders to import cooking oil, killing our local industry. So how are you going to create jobs?
So you want to see that changing?
We have to see that changing. We are importing maize, and then in Left Valley we are giving people subsidized fertilizer. Not everybody requires fertilizer in Kenya. Me, I'm a small-scale farmer. I haven't gotten that fertilizer. You can give people free fertilizer, but our agriculture is rain-fed.
Right.
Are you going to give people rain? Now, don't be surprised. Let me say this.
Please.
Because we'll start hearing about it. This government is going to take credit because of increased maize production, because of subsidized fertilizer. It's as if this government has given us rains. And this is a rain-fed agriculture.
That's on that.
So
very,
what do we want to see?
Yes, please. Yes, quick as you can, please.
We want prudent management of our taxes. This government appears to have a grudge against salaried people. There is an attack on pay slips. January, expect your pay slip 2.75 because our parliament cannot withstand the attack from the executive.
Right.
Our pay slip is still going to be attacked to get NHIF to support what my colleague was talking about, USCR.
Right.
My simple advice would be, if you get an executive who thinks that every solution requires more funding, that's a mediocre fellow.
And on that note, I need our people to digest what you just offloaded on us. And just to help you digest, thank you for that for a second. Allow me to just shift to people in Bungoma who are actually listening to what you said. Sostin Wanji is in Bungoma, and he put together this earlier on. He was able to put a few people together, and this is what they had to say. Sostin, over to you.
It is 1 year after Kenyans had a chance to elect their leaders of their own choice, and 1 year later we want to engage our residents here in Bungoma to see their expectations they had from their leaders whom they voted last year in August. That is MCA, MP, Governor, Senator, and Women Representative, and Kenya one, that is President. Baba, kwa kutangulia na wewe hapa, karibia hapa, tueleze majina yako na matarajio yako yalikuwa yepi, na kufikia hii leo labda ni nini haswa ambacho unajivunia kimaendeleo kutoka kwa viongozi wetu?
Mimi kwa majina ninaitwa Sabuni Wambolea kwa china ya utani, lakini kitambulisho ni Tonsio Chuma Were. Kwa kujivunia hii soko, kwa sababu tu nimeona mataa peke yake ndio imesha asili hapa. Wakupima wanasema tu watakuja kurenovate hii soko, na bado tutaona matokeo inaendanga tu hivi. Paka hata tunashindwa saa zingine tuwaone na malori na mchanga ndio tuamini ama itakuwa vipi. Rais wetu alikuja katika ile kiwanja ya Wanja Ndege, alituahidi masoko, kuchenga masoko na kupeana trade loan, watu wafanye kazi na ukulima. Akataja ukulima, ndio ukulima tunaona ni aswa sana. Ukulima ndio inakuanga aswa sana kitu mzuri, kwa sababu wakulima wote wakitoka huko na mtama, mahindi, wanga wanaleta katika hii soko ambayo tumesimama hii. Sasa tunaomba tu kweli waheshimiwa wetu, hata ukiangalia kule nje barabara, mvua ikinyesha hiyo barabara watu hawataki kukuja hapa kununua vitu. Mvua ikinyesha sana, hata penye mali tuko hapa inakuanga tu maji tubu. Watu wanapita tu kule nje Hii imekuwa tu kama nini ya ng'ombe tu ambayo wanafuka ng'ombe hapa mahali.
Asante, tuweze kuongea na baba mwingine hapa. Karibu dadi, tueleze majina yako na mwaka mmoja baadaye, baada ya uchaguzi, ni lipi kimaendeleo ambalo unajivunia kama wewe mkazi wa Bungoma?
Kulingana na mimi kwa majina naitwa Pius Wanyonyi Mahano, mfanyabiashara wa kuuza kuku, natoka hapa Ranje. Lakini kulingana na utafiti wangu, hii soko kama MCA ambaye ni Cheremie inatakana aanze kuanzia hapa, kwa sababu ni mfanyabiashara wetu ambaye anajua mashida yenye iko katika hii soko. Kwa hivyo tangu aende hatuchamuona hapa. Soko ni chafu, hata kama mvua imenyesha hakuna mwenye anaweza kuingia hapa ati anataka kununua kuku, kwa sababu matope tupu na maji tupu. Ni hayo tu.
Asante sana baba, tupate wa mwisho hapa. Baba, kwa utangulizi wa majina, tueleze ni yepi hasa ambayo wewe unajivunia baada ya mwaka moja?
Kwa majina naitwa Nyongesa Patrick. Mimi nifanya biashara wa hapa sokoni, na hapa kile kitu najivunia ni mataa tu zenye ziletwa juzi. Hizi ndio naona ni ili zile zenye zimekusaidia. Lakini hii soko kusema ukweli tu, tangu mimi niingie hii soko mpaka wakati huu, tangu 85 mpaka saa 2023 haijafanywa marekebisho. Sinzi ichengwe tu na wakoloni, imesaulika kabisa. Hata ukikuja hapa unaona tu mijengo ni ile ya ukoloni, hakuna mijengo ya kisasa ya saa hii. Hii soko yetu magavana wote wenye wameingia kwa viti, kuanzia kwa gavana mwenye alikuwaka akatoka, mwingine akaingia, mpaka waleo hii soko yetu imesaulika, ichatengenezwa. Hata wenyewe wanakuwaiti watakuja hapa kutengenezea, lakini hapa mvua ikinyesha hakuna mgeni mkasa maula anaweza ingia hapa, ni matope tupu. Imejengwa tu mijengo yenye iko ni ile ya kikoloni, ile ya zamani kabisa. Hii soko yetu tunaomba gavana atukumbuke, amekusahau kabisa, ametusahau. Isipokuwa tunamshukuru mataa, tumeona mataa sasa, tunashukuru mataa ametuletea, lakini maji hakuna. Soko hapa mvua ikinyesha huwezi tembea, hakuna mteja anaweza ingia hapa kama mvua imenyesha. Choo pia ni shida. Choo ilitengenezwa, ilifanya marekebisho tangu mwaka jana mpaka wa leo. Watu karibu 1 milioni tunashare choo milango 2, sisi na wanawake kwa wanaume.
Asante. That's all for now from Bungoma Town. This is Soko Kubwa in Bungoma Town, and as you have heard, there is still a lot of expectations from voters from Bungoma County. That's all for now. My name is Wanji Sostin.
Thank you so much, Sostin Wanji, for that. Real quick before we shift to the other panel, what do you want to see in the next 4 years? I know you're very passionate about SGBV. What do you want to see in brief?
3 points.
Yes, please.
First of all, let's build up on the steps, the strides we made on the legislation. Let's ensure that we review and pass them as well in terms of matrimonial property, in terms of maintenance for children. Secondly, there are build-ups that have been made by the past government, particularly by the Uhuru government. Let's enforce and capitalize and build up on them where they had been made steps. Finally, there's the issue of devolution. Let's also build up a system of integrating the national government and the county governments, especially in terms of GBV, that will enforce and enhance the protection of girls and women against violence.
Right, thank you. Good people, democracy is described as a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Even as we give this scorecard to the Kenya Kwanza administration 1 year down the line, this is also a scorecard on us as a society. I would like you to keep that in mind even as you review this conversation, and as we go away, you will also think about that and rate yourself. Linda, I wonder what your people have to give us as a form of takeaway.
I'm sure the baby will not throw with the bath water, and therefore the gentleman here should at least be telling us, you know, as a people, where then do we come in to make sure that we help the head to steer the wheel forward? Because after all said and done, Victor has given it 4 years, and Wakili says 4 years is too long. So we come to you, Chair. What would you expect to see? Because after all said and done, we have to at least have some element of positivity and hope that we're headed somewhere?
The current government made a very bold and ambitious promise, and that is to deliver to Kenyans universal health care, to move from universal health coverage, which means you have services closer to you, they are affordable, to care, which means those services you're accessing closer to you, what quality are they? So improvement of quality in line with Article 43 of the Constitution, that Kenyans should get the highest attainable standards of health. There is no health without a health worker. Health promoters are not health care workers. Their work is health promotion. Once they promote, they create demand. They improve the health-seeking behavior. And these people will come to the hospital. So we must look at the human resource. And there are 3 things we must do. And I'm not saying mambo ni matatu. But what I'm saying, that there are 3 things we must do going forward if we want to implement UHC. 1, employ 20,000 and have an annual framework on employment of health workers. 2, ensure that we have a framework for effective management of those who are there so that they are motivated. And number 3, ensure that you have a task force to guide us to where we need to go in terms of effective management of the human resources who are already there.
Well, Chair here has decided it's health and health and health.
Yes.
And we come to The Economist briefly. Isn't money a factor? Even though Senior there said, well, it shouldn't be about funding. Quick one.
Yes, it is, yeah. And I'd just like to make a line Kenyans that it's not the worst.
If it gets better, a lot of what we see in the economy is perception. So yes, I know it looks bad, yes, but I feel we can still have a positive vibe to it, because you see, the world looks at us, and even before investors come in, they look at us, right? So I believe it will get better with time.
All right, 30 seconds, Wakili.
Yeah, the problem we have in this country is we have a person in the name of a president who speaks too much and is quick to speak, and is quick to promise issues that he's not even capable of maintaining. For example, he said that the moment we start buying fuel and paying fuel in Kenyan shilling, we'll be trading the dollar at 120. The question is, today the dollar is 120 and 53. So I am beseeching him, perhaps he needs to be taking care of himself and his faculties before he speaks, because we are going to hold him to account to what he says.
Thank you, sir. And on that note, we wish to thank you so much. Thank you, our viewers. Thank you for the viewers who are joining us from home. Thank you, our guests who have been so kind to join us this late evening. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the challenge. We appreciate that. We wish to thank you once again for choosing TV47 this evening. And we do hope you join us on the subsequent days for our coverage.
Absolutely. I've been speaking to, on my right, Chris Otieno, security expert, Stella Oyagi, an advocate of the High Court. Lady and gentlemen, thank you so much for your insight on the People's Court tonight. We have seen your tremendous feedback, but unfortunately, we are really strained for time, but we indeed continue with the conversation online. My name is George Maringa. I'll see you next time.
And of course, with me, Adam Stuva, an economist. Thank you so much. Wakili Ndegwa, constitutional lawyer and the chair of Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, none other than Wachira Peterson. Thank you so much, gentlemen. My name is Linda Alela. I look forward to see you again next Tuesday.
Right. I'd like to urge you to go to our YouTube page for a replay of this conversation in full for you to be able to download the insights therein. My name is Victor Muyakane. Good night and may God bless you.